I'll call the January 30th, 2025 meeting of the Cumberland Planning Board's order. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Roll call. Ms. Vrashich. Here. Mr. McDonald. Here. Mr. Butler.
Here.
Mr. Scown.
Here.
Mr. Bush. Here. Mr. D'Ambrosia. Here. Mr. Costa. Here. And the chair is present at the moment. Ms. Reese is absent. Approval of the planning board minutes, 5th, 2024. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? If there are none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Butler.
Second.
Second by Ms. Vrashich. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Before we go any further, the acoustics in this room, as you know, there's a lot of echo, got high ceilings and hard walls, and all the sound bounces off of it. So I'd appreciate if you could keep it down to a whisper if you need to talk amongst yourselves, okay? Thank you. Item 3, zoning board of review recommendation, owner applicant Charles Lambro, location 2700-2700 Diamond Hill Road, Assessors Plat 28, Lot 16, zoning R1 with public water and no sewer. The applicant requests zoning relief to construct a one-bedroom accessory dwelling that is 1,480 square feet, where 800 square feet is permitted by town ordinance and 900 square feet by state statute. This item was continued from December 2024 meeting. The applicant is currently withdrawing his application. Mr. Modica, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't. He's moving on.
With no reasons, no explanations or anything?
He was able to bring the ADU within the right square footage.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me? You're welcome. Item number 4, public hearing. Minor subdivision, unified development review, preliminary plan, owner applicant Michael Silva. Project name 148 Bryant Street, location 148 Bryant Street, Assessors Plat 9, Lot 426, zoning R1 with public water and public sewer. The applicant proposes to subdivide the subject property into 2 lots with one pre-existing house on each. The project requires waivers for minimum lot size and setbacks. It's my understanding, Mr. Modica, that this is going to be continued?
It's going to be continued. This application is tied to a zoning ordinance that the town council needs to hear. So they haven't heard it yet. So, but they will in February.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we continue the item to the February 27th, 2025 meeting.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler.
Second.
Second by Mr. Scown. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes, motion carries. Request of bond reduction. Owner applicant Heritage Builders LLC, project name Menard Estates, location Green Meadow Lane, Assessors Plat 42, lots 298, 299, and 300. The zoning is R1 with public water and no public sewer. The applicant requests a reduction of the performance bond. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look through the letter from the applicant and our assistant engineer, James Intow, there's different numbers that are out there for the bond reduction, but the correct number is what's on the second page of Mr. Intow's memo. So he is approving a bond reduction in the amount of $48,952.73. So James has been out to inspect the work there for all the public improvements. So that's the reduction he's recommending, with some left over as the maintenance guarantee. So there would be a remaining bond of $42,930.
Does the board have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, based on Mr. Entow's memo dated January 14th, 2025, I'll make a motion that we reduce the bond to the amount of, reduce the bond by an amount of $48,952.73, leaving a remaining bond maintenance guarantee of $42,930.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second? Any other discussion? Second by Mr. Costa, I'm sorry. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes, motion carries. And for the record, please note that Ms. Reese has entered the chamber at 6:35 PM. Item number 6, public hearing waiver request. Applicant Eric, and I apologize if I don't pronounce it correctly, Yajian? Yagan, okay,
Yagan.
thank you. Vicon Property. Project name, The Preserve at Haunting Hill, location Meadowbrook Drive, assessors plat 35, lot 188. The applicant seeks a waiver from the land development and subdivision regulations to not construct sidewalks within the residential development. The applicant has requested this item be continued to February 27, 2025 meeting. Mr. Modica.
Yes, so there's just some more information we needed from the applicant, and we didn't receive it in time for this meeting, so we asked for the continuance to next month.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we continue this item to the February 27th, 2025 meeting.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler,
Second.
second by Ms. Fashich. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, the chair votes yes. Okay. Pre-application meeting, item number 7, major land development comprehensive permit pre-application. Owner applicant Spinnaker Landing LLC, James Grundy. Project name Harriet Lane Condos, location 0 north of Freeway, Assessors Plat 27, lots 274 and 275. The applicant proposes to build 12 condominiums, 3 three-story buildings with 4 units. And a note here is that we will not be making any vote on this item this evening. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a little background, the applicant did present an original proposal late last year for 20 units, 5 of which were proposed to be affordable. This was heard at the December Technical Review Committee meeting. Subsequent to that meeting, the applicant withdrew that proposal and has revised the plan for 3 buildings now with a total of 12 units, 3 of which would be affordable. This was reviewed by the TRC earlier this month. The project's in a single-family zone, and by right, the property can be subdivided into 4 building lots. Since the applicant is proposing an affordable housing component, density bonuses are permitted per state legislation that was enacted last year. In this case, the legislation for 25% affordable says the planning board shall grant at least 5 units per acre. So that brings up the number of units to 13. And the applicant is opting for 12 units, 3 of which are going to be affordable. And because these are for sale units, the income limit is higher. It's 120% of area median income. So for a single person, that's around $86,000. For a 2-person household, it's about $98,000. And a 3-person household, it's about $111,000. At this point, we've identified 3 waivers that are going to be required from the project. One is a cul-de-sac without the landscape island. This is at the request of Public Works to facilitate snow removal. A waiver from sidewalk installation. Since this neighborhood does not have any existing sidewalks, there would be nothing to connect to. And then for residential density, which is the density bonus for the affordable housing. And at both TRC meetings, we heard a lot of good and constructive comments from the public, and there's still several issues that need to be flushed out and analyzed. Among them are the slope of the road leading to and from the development, drainage and potential flooding, water pressure in the area, traffic safety, emergency vehicle access, impacts to neighborhood character, and potential disruption of wildlife. In our staff report, the planning department made several recommendations for the applicant to pursue and to examine for a preliminary plan application, including providing a traffic study and a fiscal impact analysis. And due to the potential environmental issues, we've also asked the applicant to appear before the Conservation Commission, either at their February meeting or March meeting. So that's all I have for now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board have any questions for Mr. Modica? And I see Mr. Butler.
Mr. Murray, you may not know, so if you don't know, I can just wait for the applicant, but do you know how long the deed restriction would be on the affordable units?
We're asking for 99 years.
Okay, perfect, thanks. And then I think we've covered this before, but for projects like this, where it's a condo that would be for sale, you can sell it 100 times, but you're still under that deed restriction, right?
You've got to sell it to the person or
The
house
person you
making.
sell it to has to meet the guidelines.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Modica?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Under the new state law, does the state say that the town must approve a multifamily building in a single-family zone?
It doesn't say anything like that,
Yeah.
but it's,
It's more about density.
Of density?
Yeah. Generally, in any comprehensive permit, you're gonna see multifamily on a single lot. So it doesn't matter if they were single family homes on a single lot, or what you're thinking of, which is like apartment style or townhouse style. It's about the density that's given.
But is this allowed by right in that zone?
No, in this zone, it's single family housing.
Right.
State law trumps when the developer's offering low and moderate income housing.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. So the state is basically saying we have to go through with this.
so it'd be part of the waiver, one of the waivers they'd be requesting.
All right, so no way around that, you're saying?
Well, they still have to meet the standards
Right.
for approval.
Yeah.
But excuse me? They still have to meet the standards for approval. And that's what you're going to be reviewing. But the state law does provide certain specific density requirements that they didn't before.
Okay.
Any other questions? Before we go any further, because most of you, I understand, are new for a meeting like this. The procedures that we do is we have our planner make a presentation to the board may ask questions. Then we ask the developer or his representative to come forward and make their presentation, and if they have experts, engineers, so on and so forth, they will present their findings. And the board then, of course, will ask them questions. And then after that, then the floor, I open up the floor to everyone in the audience who has any questions concerning this particular item on the agenda. Everybody clear? Okay? Because if people start yelling out, it's kind of going to disrupt the meeting. But I'll assure you that you'll get a chance to make your comments. But then again, we also have, as part of the record, all the comments that were made by anyone who attended those two TRC meetings. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. So with that, I'll ask the applicant to come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Cumberland Planning Board. My name is Robert Craven, and I practice law in North Kingstown, Rhode Island. I represent the applicant here. I was not here last time. However, I have reviewed the file and findings, or at least the comments that people made. I have with me Chris Duhamel from Dupree Engineering. Since the last two matters or opportunities that the town had to deal with this with technical review committee meetings, and there's resulted in a staff memo with recommendations by the planning department I'm going to have Mr. Duhamel address those comments and recommendations for the benefit of the board, and then I might reserve an opportunity to come back and make any argument that I think it's appropriate before you turn it over to the public.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. Chris?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Chris Duhamel. I'm a professional engineer and land surveyor with Dupree Engineering, with offices located at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island. We're here tonight for a pre-application review of a comprehensive permit application. The site is located on Assessors Plat 27, lots 274 and 275. There is frontage on the property from Harriet Lane and Abbey Drive rather. The entire site area is 4.73 acres. The property at this time has been surveyed to a Class 1 standard with a historic survey. We've since updated the wetland delineation on site. We flagged the limit of freshwater wetlands that are located on site. We found one wooded swamp area with an associated 75-foot buffer, and we found a isolated wetland with an associated 20-foot buffer on the site. I don't know if we can bring the plan up, just to bring some context to this. We've also done test holes across the site and found the soils to be very optimum for drainage infiltration and road construction. From the existing conditions and identifying the site constraints of the wetlands, the buffers, the access to the site, we've provided for a yield plan. Given the existing zoning of the property of single-family R1, low density, we've done a yield plan that shows 4 lots could meet all zoning requirements for a minimum 25,000 square foot with a 100-foot of frontage and a usable area of 25,000 square foot. From the yield plan, we incorporated what is now approved through the state legislature for low and moderate income housing. Given the usable site area, subtracting out the wetlands, the wetland buffers, the right-of-way that would be utilized for the yield plan, we have a net area of 1.81 acres. Given that this site is serviced by public water and public sewer, the state law provides for a density bonus of 5 units per acre. So 1.81 times 5 yields additional 9 bonus lots. The 9 plus the 4 yield plan lots totals 13 potential units that could be built. And then in the way the state law reads, it's a minimum of a bonus 5 units per lot. So hence, that's why we had thought the property could support 20 units. We went to a TRC meeting with that plan and worked with the town planner and realized that this, given the neighborhood, given the density and given Mr. Grundy has owned this property and his family for so many years, he wanted to work with the town and the planning department and the planning board now to reduce the number of units from 20 to 12. So we're below what the state minimally requires of 13, or allows at 13. Now we're going to propose 12 townhouse units. The townhouse units are 1,080 square foot in net area, buildable area, livable area. Each unit would have a garage and parking in front of the garage. So there'd be a total of 2 parking spaces that would accommodate each unit. We are proposing access to the 12 units with a public road. The public road was, again, modified from the first submission where we had a private road with reduced road width of 22 feet. TRC committee felt strongly that the 26-foot width pavement would be needed in this area. They also felt that a cul-de-sac, rather than a hammerhead, would be best fitted. So we revised that first plan to submit to this plan that you have in front of you tonight, to show a cul-de-sac that would meet the requirements of the town subdivision regulations, the road width that would meet the town subdivision regulations. We provided for an island because that's what's specified within the subdivision regulations, but the TRC committee felt that the island should be omitted and that we should present a full paved cul-de-sac. So we're willing to do that if that's the pleasure of the planning board. So we've shown 4 townhouse condominiums. In each block of condominiums, there'll be 1 unit that would be dedicated low moderate income. Each condominium is designed with 2 bedrooms. We will do a fiscal impact study to show the effect on the tax base moving forward with the comprehensive permit application, meeting those requirements. We'll show a traffic study of what the impact of the 12 units will have on the neighborhood. And the fiscal impact will show how many students are possibly going to live within the new 12-unit complex. There is quite a bit of work that is left from this concept pre-application level. We would have to work with DEM, showing that we are controlling all stormwater on site. We're not creating any flooding, and that we're improving the stormwater discharge to the current DEM water quality standards. We'll also work with the town on the grade of the road, as Glenn has stated, and we'll show that there's no impact to the wetlands or the wetland buffers by this design. We'll also work with the Cumberland Water Department. I've met with them to receive whatever testing they have. Currently, additional testing will be needed, hydrant testing will be needed, additional flow monitoring will be modeled to show that there is fire flow, that there is water service, and any options that we have to do to make certain that we have that. We'll also work with the sewer department, showing the discharge of the 12 units. At this point, I believe there'll be gravity discharge, but they might require individual pumping stations. So there's quite a bit of work to go. We're in the beginning stages of this. We're willing to work with the planning department, with the planning board. I forgot one thing. They wanted to have additional screening to Route 295, and we'll certainly accommodate that in later stages of the development with some evergreen plantings. So I think I've covered everything, but I'm here to answer any questions and
Does the board have any
take more
questions?
notes. I've taken pages and pages of notes.
I'm sure you have. Mr. Butler?
So I think a lot of my questions were brought up by the members of the technical review committee, and it sounds like those answers are being formulated around drainage, traffic study, economic impact, slope of the road, the hydraulic issues. It was seemed like it was back and forth with the technical review committee around public, private, what public services would be provided, and I didn't know. So it sounds like the road would be public. Would there be a condo association doing trash and snow removal? Is all that, it's just going to be a regular Cumberland road with regular public services, or have you gotten that far?
We were going to utilize the services that are available off of a public road. Initially, it was a private road, so we would take care of the maintenance of that, but now that it's being designed, engineered as a public road, we'll assume whatever the town wants.
If I could add to that, I think that's a subject still up for discussion with Public Works. We haven't decided which way that's going to go, if it'll be private or public.
Okay. One of the things that struck me when I looked at the drawing was the length of the driveways. They seem really long. But so I just want to make sure so when I read the TRC minutes, it sounded like that's something that the TRC requested, that they wanted parking for more than one car per unit. So I'm wondering, is that the reason why the driveways are so long, or is it just the layout of the lots, or?
I think we have more work to do on that. I want to have a minimum of 20 feet from the edge of the right-of-way. That's not the edge of the pavement, but the edge of the street. A minimum of 20 feet from there to the garage door, so that would allow for one parking spot dedicated without parking within the right-of-way. So there is a bit of a length, a 10-foot length additional from the right-of-way to the edge of pavement. So some of the other units, they fit there at this point, but we might be moving them closer to have less pavement.
And I think my last question for now is about the, I'll call it a traffic circle, for lack of a better term. So on that drawing, it looks like the traffic circle is landscaped, but now it sounds like the town wants just one big cement circle? Is that?
Yes, that's what the TRC had given an opinion for.
Which I understand from the snow removal perspective, why they like that. I just, when I look at this, there's just a lot of impervious surface. And it would be nice if there was less, considering this is a wooded area, now we're putting down a lot of pavement over here. So, but I understand where Mr. Duarte comes from with the snow plowing and, the traffic islands create issues, but maybe that's something, if this moves towards preliminary plan, there's a happy medium of accommodating public works, but also adding some green space into shortening driveways and doing something with the
Sure.
cul-de-sac. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else with a question? Mr. Costa?
I just want to make sure I'm clear on these buildings, these units. Each one of these buildings is a unit. Am I correct in saying that?
There's 4 units in each cluster. The units themselves are 15 by 36.
And there's 4 in each building, 4 units, 4 condos?
The buildings, the contiguous buildings hold 4 condominiums.
One of these buildings holds 4 condominiums.
Can you see the delineation of the units, how they're staggered? The architect has staggered the units within the building itself. So it's not just a rectangular square, it's got some
What I got
character
confused on
to
was when you stated that each unit is going to have a garage.
yes.
So, am I accurate here? There are 4 units in each building, so, but they're only going to have 2 garages to share?
No, 4.
4 garages.
Right here,
Oh, that one, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see that one.
right here.
And as I drive up the street, the first thing I'm going to see are these garages, correct? Because they're going to be facing,
Garages face the street, just says that this is.
okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Bush?
Looking at the units laid out here, can you tell me the distance from building 1 to the lot line where the residences are? Approximately know that?
0 is at the property line, and station 50 is the first driveway. So it's 50 feet,
Shows 50 feet, okay.
that's the closest. They run out of power?
Any other questions?
I had one more.
Mr. Butler?
Sorry, it's about the drainage. So, and I know you're still studying drainage, and there's a lot of engineering that would have to happen. And I know Mr. Duarte brought up the concern about stormwater runoff from 295 that naturally will flow, that flows onto this property. Now, I couldn't tell by the topography lines on here, it's just the way it's laid out. Does stormwater run off from the existing neighborhood onto this property?
A portion of it does, yes. The entrance at Harriet Lane is lower, so that area, there are two catch basins at Harriet Lane and a culvert that captures that drainage and routes it onto this property. And at this point, we haven't found any easements that would allow for that discharge from Harriet Lane. But Route 295, the topography seems to flow to the site. We've been on the property after rainstorms. We haven't seen any scouring or any channels that lead to the wetlands, so that's yet to be determined. More work has to be done on that. But we'll certainly not increase any of the runoff from this development to the wetlands and likely to the to any surrounding neighborhoods.
And would it be up to the applicant if there's runoff coming from Harriet Lane onto this property, even if there's not a, would that be something that would be resolved as part of the development, or something the town would have to take care of, or how would that?
As far as the development, we'll control all the stormwater by the impervious surfaces that you've noted. The town already has drainage structures out there. It's a matter of an easement, and Mr. Grundy would address that better, or Mr. Craven. But at this point, we're not proposing any alteration to the town drainage.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I understand you have to control the drainage, the stormwater runoff on the property. I guess my concern, and I'm sure a lot of the folks that are in this room, is if this is naturally catching the stormwater that's coming from the neighborhood, and now there's a development there with all this impervious surface, where is that water then gonna go? And,
Yeah, it's not unlike any other development. You analyze what drains onto the site regardless of property lines, and you control that discharge. So a 100-year storm, if you will, that overtops the catch basins at the end of existing Harriet Lane, we would have to channel that water, keep that water going, so it doesn't flood out the existing neighborhood or doesn't flood out the new condominiums. So that is part of the design that.
And I understand it's one of those things that until we get to preliminary plan, it's hard to.
Yes.
You have to do the engineering to figure it out. So
Yes,
at least if it's on the radar, I guess that's my biggest.
definitely on the radar, and it's not unlike any other development. We can't just block that runoff and say, it's
Good
not our
luck.
problem, it's part of the
But
design,
it has happened, and so
okay?
people are wary, we've
That's
all
where-
been sitting here long enough to have heard all the horror stories from Genoway on of, promises that the existing neighborhood wouldn't get flooded out, and then they got flooded out, and, it took years and years of, getting the town to, get the money to address it, and so it is I think of the many issues that we would want to see taken care of in preliminary plan, I think that's the one that I would, and I'm sure many of my colleagues would spend the most time really trying to understand, because we have, approved developments in the past, and the drainage just hasn't worked as it was designed, or it wasn't built as it was designed, or whatever the issues were, but, when you have a neighborhood that's been there for over 50 years, and is already having drainage problems. I think we all want to make sure not only we're not exasperating those, but if we can help solve some of those, that would be even better. But thank you very much.
Mr.
you.
Scone?
Yes, I just have a question in regard to the ponds. Maybe you can clarify this. It just reads a little bit unusual here. It said, Mr. Duarte asked, who will maintain the ponds? And Mr. Duhamel said the town would. And Mr. Duarte explained the town does not currently maintain the pond. That would be the responsibility of homeowners or homeowners association. I'm concerned as to that being in the deed and so forth in regard to this particular project. I live in a condo association with an issue similar to that. And it's very critical that that has to be spelled out and taken care of on a regular basis. So that would be a concern that I would have to make sure that that is covered.
Certainly. The DM permitting requires a stormwater maintenance plan to be approved and ownership of that stormwater maintenance to be established. So before we come back to you with a drainage design, we'll have that specified. And as Mr. Duarte has stated, that even on town roads, the homeowners association is required to maintain that. So that'll be one of the duties of the homeowners association,
To maintain the town road?
to maintain the ponds.
Oh, the ponds, yeah, okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Question.
Mr. Costa?
At the present time, when storm drain water comes off of 295, I'm familiar with the site. I have visited the site. That pond that you're referring to, is that on the left side, sort of like in a gully? If I'm
The
standing on
isolated
Harriet-
wetland?
If I'm standing on Harriet Lane, if I'm looking up to 295.
Sure.
Because that's how much of a pitch it is. You're looking up, you're not looking straight forward at 295.
Right.
On the left side, I was told by a neighbor who's been there for a long time that that used to be a pond. And at some point in time, it's dried out. But at the present time, when it rains, does the storm water come off of 295 into that pond?
I haven't witnessed that, and we were out there investigating that in the last month's rainstorms. We had a couple of, heavy rainstorms, and we didn't find any scouring that indicates that.
Because I'm just curious, because at that point, if that starts to fill up, it's naturally going to go into Harriet Lane, because that's the pitch. That's the way the pitch is.
Yeah, so the majority of the wetland, the wooded swamp wetland, is lower than Harriet Lane. It's to the east,
Okay, I'm just.
And
I'm
it's
just
lower
curious
and
about
it
that. I
drained-
think that's something that needs to be referenced along with other issues that are here.
yes.
Any other questions? I've got a few, okay? You noted that the wetlands have been flagged and certified?
By our certified biologists, they have to be verified
yes.
by DM.
But that it's been flagged?
It has been flagged.
Okay. Did it change the area of any of the wetlands? Did it decrease or increase?
Historically, it looks like it's increased.
So does that have any effect on your calculations as far as, when you reduce the amount of buildable land based on the wetlands?
It does. We took out the new wetland area to get a net area of 1.81 acres.
Okay, so now, when you did that calculation, it hasn't changed from the flagging?
No,
Okay.
that's based on the new flagging
Okay.
and the new buffers. The old buffers were 50 feet, now they're 70 feet.
The cul-de-sac, by omitting the landscaped island in the middle, is that going to reduce the diameter at all of the cul-de-sac?
No,
So
no.
it's going to stay the same, it's just going to be all asphalt all the way across? The other question, because one of the neighbors had mentioned at the TRC meeting, referenced the buffers to 295 and the loss, of soundproofing. Can you tell me, do you know how far from, let's say, the 295 right away to the closest set of buildings, what the distance is?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, we're looking at
From the
buff-
existing buildings on
No, the
homes
buildings
on
that,
area?
the buildings that you're proposing,
Okay,
okay? And so, which is, when, it's actually one group that appears to be, well, maybe two of them are almost the same distance away from the high, 295. I was just wondering what the distance was from the edge of the building, the new building, proposed building, to 295,
it scales about 100 feet,
about 100 feet. Okay,
and that's to the edge of the breakdown lane.
yeah, because I'm really concerned about, because I know, I mean, the traffic on 295, I can even hear it from my house, depending on the weather, whether the air is heavy or light, and I live on Angel Road. And so I'm more concerned about some screening for all the neighbors in this area also, given the fact that a good portion of this building area is going to have some sort of an impact on sound going straight across from 295 into, the Harriet Lane area and so on. And the new residents in the proposed
The new
area.
residence could serve as a sound block, because there'll be a structure.
What, excuse me again?
The new residences are a structure that would serve to block Harriet Lane.
I understand. Okay, so, and they're gonna stand up there, hand in hand, arm in arm. Got it. I got it. Okay. Relatively.
That's my opinion anyways.
Okay, relative to drainage easements and lack thereof, I own a property in town where there's a catch basin and a pipe that goes between my neighbor and the property that I own. It discharges into a ditch along the back of my property. Okay, we are getting tons of water coming off, runoff coming off the Diamond Hill Road, okay? And it floods back quite a bit. And my neighbor's had water in her basement, and from time to time, I'm experiencing the same thing in that property that I own, okay? And I'm working now with the town to try to help ease that situation. But the point that I'm getting at, okay, relative to you not being able to find an easement, my deed does not describe any kind of an easement whatsoever of that pipe going between myself and my neighbor, and no easement for that ditch. Now, I can appreciate that maybe the same thing that's happened here, happened at my property, is the same thing here. So I'm hoping that there will be drainage easements that will be, you have to talk with Mr. Duarte, I
Codified.
guess, to clarify, and because it's been a nightmare for me, and I've been pulling out my hair for the 4 or 5 years that I've owned that property, okay? But I understand and I appreciate the fact that if you can't find an easement, can't find an easement for mine, and I also have an aerial easement that doesn't show up on my plan because I got high tension wires that run behind my house. I don't know if I've got any other questions, because I think I'm good. Anybody else? Mr. McDonald?
Thank you. It's just an editorial comment. What Mr. Butler said about Jenna Way, we remember that. Forgive me, my wife is ill and I'm trying to prevent coming here with the gift that keeps on giving, if you know what I mean. Reading all of this, hydro is no small thing. We have Mr. Duarte referencing a hydro analysis. We have pond maintenance issues. We have the topography of the area. We have wetlands on the east, particularly the east side, I believe, the east and west side. And these things have to be addressed. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Anyone else? Okay. At this point, I'll open up the meeting to the floor. However, before I do that, I want to preface a couple things. And I appreciate the residents who did show up to the two TRC meetings. I've been through all their comments, and they raised some very good questions, and they have some really good concerns. Some I wanted to mention, of course, buffers and so on, that have been brought up. So If there's anyone in the audience that wants to add to what's already in the data here, rather than being redundant, okay, and going through all this, because we have it, and I went through it with a fine tooth comb, and I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you did an excellent job of asking the right questions, okay, and making the right comments. So, that being said, I see hands going up, and I'm going to say this. If you have a question, please come forward to the podium, give us your name and address for the record.
My name's Kimberly Coulter. I live at 210 Harriet Lane. Before I purchased the house, there was a flooding or runoff issue. And I believe Lynch and Sons put in I don't know, rock and a pipe that goes into the sewer or the drainage, water drainage. I'm concerned that I don't know how they configured it. It was way before I purchased the house. But I'm concerned that drainage would go back up into that pipe, back up into my backyard. And it's very concerning. I've mowed my lawn, and I think there's an underground stream. I've mowed the lawn, and I've gone up to my hip because there's a void. So, you know, safety, my safety, my dog's safety, and my friends' and family's safety.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Coulter, I'm reading your comment from the meeting, so thank you. Oh, yes.
Hello, I'm Teresa Gargano. I'm at 209 Harriet Lane. Okay, so I do have a couple questions. One on the comment that was made about the water running down from the stop sign down Harriet. That's not true. It's both ways. I'm the second house to that woods there. When I first moved into my house in 2018, the entire basement was painted, and they said it was due to flooding that we had because we had a very rainy year, that one particular year, apparently in 2026, I want to say.
Pretty close.
Yep, and come to find out, the back right corner where the foundation is built, the wood is all rotting completely. And I just found this out because I have a fence, so I don't see that. And I was told by my neighbor, she said, you know, it's really rotting down there, and that's because of all the flooding that we have. So the second thing I wanted to say was, and excuse my shaky voice, I'm a little bit nervous.
Oh, we're not here to scare you.
So the next thing was that, so we do have a big water issue, and the first plans had all of the units, if you look at the layout up on the top left, and they said it was because it was too high, and it would cause the rundown to either be exacerbated or worse, and worse. Then they moved it over to the right side, which was originally you can't build there. If you look previously where surveys were done, and however many years the Grundys have owned this land, they were not approved for building. So what changed between then and now? Maybe it was because the survey was done in the driest month of this year. And if you really look at it during a wet season, it's a pretty big deal. And then to move it because of the draining coming down to the right side where the swampland is, and I do urge each of you to go out there and take a peek. You can throw a little stone and hit the highway right there, and the swamp's right there. So that alone confuses me, and it concerns me with my property as well as my neighbor's property who's right there, as far as, you know, for safety. The other thing too is that we don't have a fire hydrant on our road. There is not a fire hydrant on Harriet Lane. It's at the intersection to the right. So is that something that the town pays for? Because we already have pressure issues with water, as you've heard. But also, if there's a fire and that fire hydrant, is it going to even reach it? What are the laws, the standards of that? Are we safe?
I could be wrong, but I thought I saw in the TRC minutes that the fire chief did recommend a fire hydrant would need to be part of this, and it would be, I think generally that's paid for by the applicant as part of the road work.
Okay. Okay, so that's another concern that I have. Also, as far as the sound buffer, I mean, the last time I was here, I said, if you go out and I let my dogs out in the fall or the winter, I close my eyes and I pretend it's the ocean. because it's so loud.
Yeah.
And you can actually convince yourself that it sounds like the waves of the ocean. But when it's 6 in the morning and you've got a, 18-wheeler wailing on that horn, you're gonna wake right up. And so because it's on such high topical land, the trees are really tall. And so when they say that the height or the structure of the buildings will help buffer that, I find that hard to believe because yes, they are high in the right up there, but if you go and look at how big some of those trees are, a lot of them being, they're dead even, that is where you'd have to compensate upward to really buffer or fix that buffering that I personally like the peace and quiet that we do get one season of the year, maybe 2 seasons of the year, when it is full of all of the greenery and beauty that hides that highway. And then the last piece that I wanted to say was, it's a dead-end road. And we've got 4 children, brand new families, wonderful neighbors, and the kids are running around. They chose the dead end for a reason when they bought their homes. And they're all running around. We all interact and play. We have 2 children potentially coming on the way. If I look at my Ring camera and just calculate how many times a car goes by, it's just the 2 neighbors, maybe twice or 3 times a day. And if you were to put in 12 units, 2 people per unit, you're increasing that traffic flow up 48%. Just in the small amount of land, you're putting these massive units that are equivalent to the size of just my house. If you look at it from that perspective, you'll see that it's incredibly, you're congesting a lot of people in that very small space. And the amount of traffic that's going to be coming through there, it no longer is a safe neighborhood for all the little under 5-year-old children that are living there now. So those are my biggest concerns. It really is safety, it's traffic, fire hydrant, backflow of water. And I urge you to really take a deeper look at how the plans have changed to where they're changed to now. It's either place where you put the housing, I don't feel it's going to do a service for anyone, to be honest with you, and it's going to cause a lot of problems down the line, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See, no problem, right?
Easy peasy.
Yeah, easy peasy.
Abigail Egan at 1 Home Avenue. So I wanted to just touch on 2 questions or points that were raised today. One by, I believe, Mr. Costa regarding the pitch and the slope of the property. If I can implore you to do so, please go out and see the actual lot of land that this is proposed for. So I believe, Mr. Costa, your question was around both the pitch coming into the property and then also some from 295. Looking to the left, that is entirely a downhill slope towards not only Harriet and Abby, but also to Home Avenue. So I think the important thing to note here is we're not just talking about neighbors on one street. We are talking about truly the entire Broadview community that lives here, because that water flows downhill. It is gravity. And if we have ever looked outside our window, it is a pond, it is a lake. If it had been cold enough consistently, the kids would be skating out there in our neighbor's yard on Home Avenue. That then flows down to Ronald, and if you were to look on their backyards, they are also flooding. So the flooding is persistent. It's not just on one street. It is truly an entire neighborhood issue, which is going to potentially be compounded by your question around the driveway length. So I know that you mentioned potentially shortening that. I have not met a family that has a car that comes home and then leaves in a perfect sequence. So you have a parking space that is for one car. Most families are then going to default to parking on a street or parking in some other space. It's already a constricted neighborhood for parking, and if you're now talking about the cul-de-sac potentially keeping that green space in, it's going to create implications for emergency vehicles to get around that space, for plows, for a whole number of things. So yes, you shorten the driveway to add more leakage or leach field for that water runoff, but you're swapping it for another problem of parking, emergency vehicle access, snowplow removal, all of those public services. So it is truly a whole neighborhood issue, and even with some of the recommendations, you're faced with another problem. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Ooh, I think I'm way louder. I was born for this, who knew? My name is Caitlin Fuller. I live at 202 Harriet Lane, so the nice orange roof you can see. I am on the property line of these condos. So I think, first of all, thank you for everybody's questions and concerns tonight. I think that they really resonated with our concerns as a neighborhood. My one question was, when we're looking at his plans, it seems like they're considering the garage to be underground and not starting counting the house from the first floor, like the height of the, what is the, I'm very undereducated in all of this. What is the rule on where it would start to know how high these units would be? Like how do you know where to start? Are you starting from the?
It would be the average of the grade, so you would measure both.
So like the
lowest-
middle essentially?
Right,
Okay.
and then you'd get
Interesting.
the
Okay.
average height.
The garage is on underground, but they are on the lower level, okay? And the 2 units are on
They
top,
look-
so. But yes.
Based on the drawing, they seem very similar to the ones that are down
Yeah.
at the bottom of Marshall Avenue, next to Cumberland Collision, where the
Yeah.
ground level is kind of a garage, and then there's 2 living floors.
Yeah, so
above.
my point in asking the question is that that entire street is 1-story ranch homes with, our houses are as big as the 1-car garage. So you're talking, these are gonna look like hotels next to our houses. And I think it was Mr. Kotu, you were talking about the runoff. And as Abby said, please come look at the land. It is one giant hill. I mean, an 8-degree road is so steep, and I know they wanted it lower, but he came back again with it at 8 degrees. So I think that is one of the concerns, that we have. It's pretty significant, but that's why I asked, just because you're not only talking, these are 2 times the size of our houses, but they're also on a giant incline. So now you have that, so it's gonna look like hotels next to our houses. So just to note, we've been meeting as a neighborhood and we've been really trying to focus on this law. And so I just wanted to reiterate that what we're focusing on is part 4 under required findings for approval. There will be no significant negative impacts on the health and safety of current or future residents of the community in areas including but not limited to safe circulation of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, provision of emergency services, sewage disposal, availability of potable water, adequate surface water runoff, and the preservation of natural, historical, or cultural features that contribute to the attractiveness of the community. So we've really been focusing our efforts there. So I just wanted to talk about a couple things. One of them being the potable water. We have an insane water pressure issue in our neighborhood, and I know they're talking about pressure stations, but that doesn't help the people on Aurora all the way up at the top that are gonna lose water pressure, and theirs is already almost at an illegal limit, so that might help force pressure to these condos, but it's still coming off the water main and still going to affect the rest of our neighborhood. So we're really trying to focus on things like Abby said too. This isn't just affecting my house and our small street of 5 houses. This is affecting this entire development because of issues that we have neighborhood-wide. So that was one of them. The flooding, again, please come out and see. Our backyard has a retaining wall in it, and the water comes down off of that hill over the retaining wall, and we have lived here since August of 2022. We have had to reseed that part of our backyard twice because it pools with water and it kills the grass. So we are incredibly concerned. If now there's a structure up there, every morning when I look out there and see the slope, I just envision maybe it would be nice to have a waterfall in the backyard coming over. So I'm definitely concerned about that. I did want to bring up the snow removal. It was put in the report that the snow removal was going to be moved, I think just to appeal to the neighborhood, but I did just want to point out that when I was on the Rhode Island DEM snow disposal policy, it states, snow should be stored in upland areas away from wetlands and water bodies, and it's quite literally on top of a drainage pool, which is on top of a wetland, so it doesn't seem like that should be allowed, not just that it's not gonna look nice being in someone's side yard. So that was another thing. And I think that's it. So yeah, water, the safety with that incline of the road is definitely a major concern for us. The snow removal, the character of the neighborhood, and the character of Cumberland. I love my neighbors, I welcome more neighbors, but it just seems like we're really pushing for something that doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't seem like it would enhance Cumberland or enhance our neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McDonald?
Point of order, if I may.
I'm
Yes,
back. I told you I had a lot to say.
Okay,
Just a
1 minute.
moment, just a moment,
Mr.
please.
McDonald?
I don't know whether everybody has gone to the TRC meetings, but the last one 2 weeks ago, a gentleman from the water department I'll read it. He indicated there was a hydraulic issue in the neighborhood, and that he is awaiting input from consultants to analyze the site, assess the potential impact of the development, and determine measures to prevent further exacerbation of the issue. So it's on the table, and it will come up again. Thank you.
Okay.
This is a quick one. And our town solicitor exited. I was going to talk about an article that she wrote about benefits of Rhode Island legislation go beyond housing. And it's about the affordable housing legislature. But she has 3 items in here. I won't go into blah, blah, blah. But the first one is very critical. It says the legislature, excuse me. I forgot my glasses. The legislature, sure, thanks. Says the legislature is intended to preserve neighborhood character and promote smart growth. A 3-story complex in 100% in the surrounding areas, which are ranches and 2-story dwellings, is not characteristic, and it doesn't promote smart growth. I have nothing against affordable housing. I'm all for it. But this is ludicrous. It really is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm a little short, sorry.
You can probably take it off if you need to.
Oh, twist that. Okay. I am Kathleen Wenzel. I live at 3 Broadview Ave, which is the first home as you enter Broadview on the right-hand side behind the dentist office.
Okay.
And I have been up on this podium before in regards to our neighborhood's challenges that have been brought before the board with other projects that we have faced. We purchased our house in 2001, and our first challenge was the home behind us on agricultural land was proposed to sell for a business lot. So the business that's right next to CVS, that 2-story brick building, was proposed to be in my backyard. And that property abuts to Ronald Ave, so it would have been behind all of the first 5 or 6 homes on Broadview Ave. And that got declined because of many reasons, but one, it didn't fit the aesthetics of our neighborhood that is single-family ranch-style homes. And one of the other huge issues was the watershed. There's a swampland, there's riverways that flow into the reservoirs. So that got squashed because of those important reasons. And our neighborhood also, as you may be aware, had the issue of a gas station being proposed to go across the street from Broadview Ave, which was a big challenge that we faced, and it took a long time to resolve. But one of the biggest deciding factors was the watershed and the dangers of the water flowing in our neighborhood going into our streams and going into the water reservoir. Our neighborhood does flood, and it certainly does not take 100-year storms. Our basement has also been a victim of having water in it. So I'm very concerned about what this project is going to put stress and concerns on our entire neighborhood, just not Harriet or Abbey. We're a unit. We are a very small neighborhood, but we're very mighty and passionate for what is right. And this project doesn't fit in our neighborhood, and it doesn't fit in that small area of land, and it's only going to cause more issues. And I think the watershed is the biggest concern. There's water pressure issues, and I feel that if time is taken to really look at those ponds and the riverways and look at the reasons why these other big projects were denied, I think that is very significant for you to review and see why those were squashed and they were rejected. And even with the gas station project being rejected and Okanite being the new property owner, they work with our neighborhood significantly to find ways to make that work and to protect our lands from the way water is running into our neighborhoods. So I just want you to take consideration in those past projects that were so significant, and they were rejected for an important reason. So I just wanted to remind you of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Bassoni. I live at 205 Harriet, which is the left side of the entrance, and the drainage ditch is going to be built on my side of the property. Not to beat a dead horse about the rain, but it does flood, and with that drainage ditch, especially in the summertime with the swamp, you can't sit in the backyard because of the mosquitoes, and it's always damp back there, and the corner of my patio floods out because of this. And the second thing is, because of those condos are going to be so high, privacy. I have a condo that's going to be looking into my bedroom. And I don't think that's right, because if you guys live next to a condo, you wouldn't want people looking into your bedroom. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi there. Liza Nasruddin, 29 Aurora Drive. All right, so I didn't realize my water pressure was that bad. It is. I'm up on the hill, on the loop, and it's really bad, and I just wanted to mention that. My water pressure is crap, and I do have a pump that pushes it up. I don't know how it works, but it pushes it, seemingly. There's that, and there's also 2 doors down from me, if you're looking at my house, to the left of it, they have been flooded in the last. We had the 100-day flood a few times in the last year. Young couple, they can't make it here because they have 2 young children. They had FEMA. We've had FEMA up. Now we're up. We're still part of this neighborhood. We're up on the hill. You don't think flooding? They had FEMA. FEMA came around our neighborhood because their house was flooded. Like bad. So you're talking down there, but up on the hill, they've had flooding. So it's not just isolated, it's around the whole neighborhood. So I just wanted to put that in there. And, you know, when FEMA come knocking at your door and ask you if any of your neighbors, I'm sure, I don't know what day it was I think the end of the summer last year. I'm sure they have to register or tap into, you know, that was shocking to me. It's like, that's FEMA. It was kind of sobering. There, thanks a million for your time, and please I appreciate your time doing this for our neighborhood. This is legit, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Doug Long. I live at 290 Harriet Lane. I would echo the gratitude for your attention to our neighborhood. I share the concerns of my neighbors with the proposed condos, and I want to highlight one of the negative health effects that I haven't heard mentioned in the other meetings. But first, I want to acknowledge how vitally important for Rhode Island it is for us to develop more affordable housing. It's not that long ago that I was renting an apartment myself, and then searching through this very intense housing market for the home where I now live on Harriet Lane. Rent increases have been putting pressure on people who are already struggling. So it's a good thing that we're getting creative and looking for ways to get more affordable housing, but we shouldn't get so creative that we endanger the health and safety of future residents, as I believe these condos would unfortunately do. I'm not a lawyer, so this has been a lot of learning I've been trying to do about state law, and I know it's a new state law we're getting caught up with here. I understand the language in the law mentions that local boards shall approve, but it also says may deny, right? Depending on, and then they have a whole list of conditions that may cause a denial, one of which regards health and safety. So, take a breath. The proposed condos are very close to a major roadway, right? The air pollution is going to have serious negative health effects over the long term. The diagrams here shown show that all of the proposed units are within 500 feet of Interstate 295. Some are as close as 200 feet. The EPA in 2014 published a statement that the negative health effects of air pollution from major roadways are most significant within the 500 to 600 foot range. So all of the proposed units are within that critical range where they're going to be feeling the negative health effects of the air pollution. So what does this mean for future residents? According to the EPA's statement in 2014, that would mean higher rates of asthma, cardiovascular disease, impaired lung development in children, preterm and low birth weight infants, childhood leukemia, and premature death. That's a quote. How confident can we be in those expectations? We might say, well, those are just correlations. You know, how much research do we really have? Well, a meta-analysis from 2022 that reviewed 353 studies found, quote, an overall high to moderate to high level of confidence in these kinds of associations with a range of negative health effects, published by Bugard and colleagues in 2022. In the past, it might have seemed okay to build homes this close to major roads. But now we know better. I think we should listen to what the EPA is telling us, listen to what our scientists are telling us, and use that information to keep our community safe. While the proposed condos may sound affordable on paper, the reality is that they would come with a hidden cost over the long term by shortening the lives of the people who would live there. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll get up eventually.
What?
My name is John Johnson. I live at 247 Harriet Lane. And I just had some questions about the soil that's on that proposed area where the condos are going to be. Is it shale? Is it rock? What is it? Anybody?
You have to go for the chair.
Oh. Do you know if it's shale or rock?
I'm not an engineer, so I can't answer that question. But I will defer to the engineer if he's aware of what the soils are.
Yes, sir. We did test, Depree Engineering completed test holes across the site. We found a gravel, I'll give you the exact type of soil it is. Canton Charlton, gravelly loam, fine sandy loam, gravelly loam, which is well drained, which is optimum for infiltrating stormwater.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm looking at the footprint of the proposed condos, pretty substantial from where I stand or sit. And I know that there's studies of this and studies of that, but when, push comes to shove and that water comes down from above there, because it's raised, into the yards of the neighbors and into the street, who picks up the tab on that? Is that picked up by the town? Is that picked up by the condo association? Is that picked up by insurance companies? I'm just curious as to who's responsible if in fact the studies turn out to be not so accurate. Nobody picks it up?
Here, that's not. it sounds like we're passing the buck, but none of us are lawyers or engineers, I can tell you that. But it's a
Okay.
very good question.
I mean, I'm just curious as to,
And unfortunately, our solicitor is not here at the moment, and she would be able to answer that question.
okay. Sure. The question is that there's studies that are being done that'll show that the rainwater, wastewater will go to a certain area and it won't affect anybody and it won't do this, it won't do that. But we've already got neighbors with water in their yards, water in their cellars. If in fact you put a large complex like that on top of a hill, that's where rainwater used to go, into that ground where that new property is going to be, that rainwater's got to go someplace. And if the studies are incorrect and the water comes down and fills up basements or backyards or streets or whatever, I'm curious as to who is responsible for that. Is it the town? Is it the condo association? Is it Jim Grundy? Is it me and my insurance company? I'm just curious as to where that money is going to come from.
I would say that's a very broad question. I mean, that's difficult to answer. That's a very broad question. I mean,
It's a broad question that if there's damage done due to the covering of soil now that once absorbed the rainwater, the snow, it absorbed that before, and now it's got no place to go. It's got to go someplace.
yes.
We can only do one at a time at the podium.
What I would say is that it would depend. It depends on the location, it depends on the damage, it depends on a multitude of factors that I can't answer a hypothetical for you right now.
Well, it's,
Mr. Costa?
Many years ago, we had a case here very similar to this. Mike is on.
Just turn.
Many years ago, we had a case, and I believe the only people on the board at the time was myself and Mr. Kuchu. I don't really want to talk about where the area is, but these people came before us because they were upset because of the runoff going into their houses. And Mr. Kuchu and I went out there, and we were knee-deep in water. And they were complaining to us the fact that their insurance company was very upset with them. They were very upset with the developer. And the case went on for several years. And we felt pretty bad about what happened to these people because they were brand-new houses that were built. And the water, the drainage was not done properly. And eventually, I think what happened was the developer had to go back and redo some of the excavating in order to make it better for the neighborhood. Ultimately, as a homeowner, I'm thinking to myself that I one year did have a flood in my basement, and it was because of a culvert that got clogged, and all the water backed up and ended up in my basement, and I had to pay the price.
you had to pay the price. Okay.
Yep. So that's just one instance. That's probably not the protocol for all insurance companies. It might be a good phone call to make.
Okay.
For one thing, I'm very aware of what goes on in your neighborhood, okay? Because I have a friend that lives there and has had problems, okay? Mrs. Ferrera?
I just want to say that I had an incident in my house where the sewer pumping station backed up and came into my house. The town was responsible for it. So I don't see why the town wouldn't be responsible for this water also.
I'm just putting out that question because, I've lived there a long time and you talk about the grade and that's a hill. You can call it whatever you want. That's a hill where these condos are going to be. The water's going to flow down the hill. It's not going to flow up the hill.
I
And then
think
down the
as
hill.
the solicitor said, that it's hard for us to deal in hypotheticals. And the other thing is, one of the challenges of these quote-unquote informational meetings is there's not a lot of information. Obviously the applicant's coming to kind of get a temperature before he goes out and hires lots of engineers and goes through, a very expensive process. So we don't have a drainage plan, we don't have DEM certificates, so a lot of the questions that are being asked, the applicant doesn't have the answers, we don't have the answers. If the applicant ultimately goes to preliminary plan, which would be actually the official start of this process, then he will come with a very well-engineered drainage plan. We'll be able to ask very specific questions. Mr. Duarte, our Public Works Director, will be able to analyze, Mr. Ento, the town engineer. So at that point, you have something real and concrete that you can look at and say, now we can answer questions and figure those things out. DEM at that point will have gone out and signed off that the wetlands that they flagged are actually the extent of the wetlands and the barriers are being protected. The water department will have weighed in and said about the hydraulics, and there'll be a traffic study, there'll be an economic impact study, and then not every question gets answered, but a lot of the questions get answered. And I know that's very frustrating for all of you. It's incredibly frustrating for us. When the state law changed, this was one of the things that changed, is they reduced the process pretty significantly. And so it's preliminary plan, final plan, basically. They kind of took a step out. And what's replaced that is these informational meetings. But obviously, and I certainly don't blame the applicants, they don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing engineering and architecture and drainage studies and environmental studies and economic impact studies, only to have us say, no, absolutely not, or, it doesn't fly. So I appreciate your question, but I think the solicitor is right. It's just, it depends. I was here at the end of the story that Mr. Costa told when those neighbors came here month after month after month after month, and we were helpless. We couldn't do anything for them. So it is something that's very high on our radar because of that experience, I think. And drainage will be something that I would expect Mr. Duarte, our Public Works Director, to be here at preliminary plan, for the town engineer to be here, for the applicant to bring in experts and engineers to really walk us through in extreme detail what the drainage plan is, not just for this development, but the surrounding area. It's incredibly important. And you're right, but as far as who's responsible if something were to happen, it's just so situational. If it's a 100-year storm and there's nothing anybody could have done to prevent it, and the no storm drainage system was ever going to prevent it, who knows? Just all those. But we appreciate your question and your frustration, and we share it in many ways.
Okay. But they're good questions, but what's important is the TRC meeting and the input that we received from some of you out here. And I went through them as you were coming up, and I said, okay, this is who this person is that wrote this, and so on. And it's good to put a face with the name, okay? And it's very important that you give us this information, because this is the stuff moving forward that now we know more about and what we should be concentrating on, okay? So I thank you. I wish we could have, answered.
No, that's
the
fine. I
question.
was just curious as to, how it would play out.
Well, I can tell you because the house that I own, that I was talking about before, we did have water in the basement. Our neighbors had substantial water in their basement. And we're still trying to figure out, I've gone to DOT because it's Diamond Hill Road, I've gone to town's public works people and so on. And I'm still trying to get somebody to go out there and do something. So I can appreciate what you're talking about, because I'm going through my own frustrations. So it's not like you're falling on deaf ears. Because
I understand
I'm going
that.
through the
I
same
understand
kind
that.
of
I'm
thing.
just wondering where the,
The buck stops.
Buck stops, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Uncle Joe.
My name is Joe Lamagna. I live at 23 Aurora Drive. I'm a neighbor of Liza, who spoke to you earlier. I'd like to add to the information so that you have a little bit more to go by. Several years ago, I had to replace the water line that ran from the street to my home. And when I did, I had a pressure test done, and I was getting 24 pounds per square inch in my house. So I did a little research, and I understand, and I know a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and I'm not an expert in this, but from what I understand, the average water pressure in a domestic home is somewhere between 50 and 70 pounds per square inch. And the absolute minimum that's allowed for building construction is 40 pounds per square inch. On the day I had the pipe changed at my home, the water department was present, and they measured 47 pounds at the hydrant. So to be emphatical, this water supply issue, to me, is the major issue in this application. And you can talk about pressure boosters, but that doesn't improve volume. This whole neighborhood needs more volume of water now. And when I had that test done on my house, that was before several new homes were built in the neighborhood. And those all new taps were put in. You all know that I've been an advocate of affordable housing, and I salute the effort. I've been a housing commissioner in this town for 26 years. I ran the nonprofit housing corporation for 25 years. I am still involved in the national and regional councils for national housing, for affordable housing advocacy. So I'm not here to oppose the concept of affordable housing. But when it comes to infrastructure, to me, this is the major issue, and it should be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ted McNamee. I live at 38 Aurora Drive. And one concern I have is with the height of these buildings and the fact that they're on a hill. I just wonder what sort of exterior lighting they're going to have. And, you know, whether the exterior lights are going to be shielded and, you know, the effect that'll have, because they are going to sit very, very high. So all of a sudden, you know, you have 12 units with lights in front and back, and it's going to be, you know, like a space center.
It's something that will come up somewhat during preliminary plan, but we just did a project, a self-storage facility over in the industrial park where there was a neighborhood downhill, and that was the concern. So the town ordinance is that the light, whatever light has to stay on the property. You can't have light that bleeds over into the abutting. But to accommodate the neighbors who live downhill from that storage facility, they found lights that kind of have a shield on them.
Right.
So the light just kind of goes straight down
Yeah.
as opposed to pooling out. And I think they also put them on motion detectors so they, you know, wouldn't be on all the time. But I think it's a good question, and it's, I see the engineer writing, so it'll be something that comes through preliminary plan. So
Okay.
it's a good thing to question.
And I just have one more comment about looking at the layout. I just wonder where people are going to put their trash barrels. There's not a lot. Yeah, well, I mean, when it's trash and how the trucks are going to go with their mechanical arm and stuff like that. So thank you.
Thank you. Good. You guys have private trash or public?
I'm Brian Fuller, 202 Harriet Lane. My wife is Caitlin, who's been leading this charge fearlessly. We have 3 of the children on that street. Again, want to thank all of you for the time and also the patience of hearing us all out. I just have some comments really that I think summarizes a lot of the sentiment of the neighborhood. And, you know, as people have said, the problem with this development really is not the affordable housing piece at all. The issue is the high-density condos on a property that would otherwise be zoned for 4 houses. We have concerns with the problems that this development is going to cause, and we're also concerned with the existing problems that are just going to be exacerbated with this development. The only reason this condo development is even a possibility is because of this new law granting builders really far-reaching exceptions as long as just a fraction of the housing is affordable. The spirit of this law is to address the housing crisis, making it easier for affordable housing to be built, but still where it should be appropriate. The spirit of the law is not about giving builders a loophole to exploit for profit. I have no problem with people pursuing profit, except when it's done by exploiting a law with a completely different intent, and also when that exploitation is going to negatively impact an entire neighborhood. I keep hearing that according to this law, the development has to be approved, but we know that's not true. There are numerous issues with this development that are issues cited in the law as grounds to deny this project. With all the concerns being raised and all the modifications to the plan that are supposedly going to address them, to put it bluntly, you're still just putting lipstick on a pig. These problems are still going to remain. And as it was brought up, who's going to deal with these problems? It's not going to be Mr. Grundy. He's going to make his money. He's going to wash his hands, walk away. And as long as he gets through this approval process, he's going to be in the clear. It's going to be all of us as a neighborhood that's going to have to deal with this ultimately, whatever we're left with. So just as this proposal, the process plays out, I'm asking everyone to just take a close look at this law and read it in light of the issues that have been raised. I really appreciate you careful attention to all the comments that have already been raised. And just, as Cumberland residents, we ask that when it comes time to make the final decision, you just make the decision with the best interests of, an entire neighborhood in mind. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
If it's okay, I just want to just make one further comment.
Just one more comment.
Just one more. I thank you so much for sharing your own personal experiences with having issues with your basements and flooding. And I know I mentioned earlier that our home was a victim of flooding as well. And unfortunately, we're not in an area where we typically carry flood insurance. I wish we lived next to the ocean in our ocean state, but our insurance didn't provide any help for us when our basement flooded. We were able to get assistance through FEMA by taking out a 2% loan, but we had an $11,000 project to put French drains in our home, so we had to absorb the cost of that event. And unfortunately, I think that if this problem continues to put taxing troubles of water in our neighborhood, it's going to be more people are going to be faced with flooding, and it's going to be a financial burden. That was a financial burden for us that we had to pay over time until it was paid off. But $11,000 then isn't anything to shake a stick at. That's a lot of money for a homeowner to have to absorb. So I just wanted to mention, so thank you for sharing.
Thank you. There was one other gentleman I saw.
And good evening. My name is Jim Conway. I live at 10 Home Ave. Thank you. I am not one of those that's already reported out here, but I'm going to talk about the exact same thing. My property is where all of this water goes to. I'm that area where the water comes and goes under Home Avenue. What's happening now, a few years ago, the town realized there was a problem. They changed those pipes under the street and they made them larger pipes. Over the last few years, when we bought the home 20 years ago, during the summer, that would dry up. That brook would be totally dry. Now it doesn't dry up anymore, to the point when we have an inch or 2.5 inches of rain, we now have 4 feet of water almost crossing over Home Ave. So when we talk about that water coming down, that really, we think about it, but it all falls into my property. And I know it affects most of my neighbors who are doing a phenomenal job trying to work together. And if it wasn't for our neighbors who keep those pipes clean, as well as the town, the area would be flooded more. So it's really about this community that takes care of that. But really, when I go out and leave to go to work and there's 4 feet of water in my side yard, I worry. I worry about that wall. I worry about that water coming into my garage. And that's just with a few inches of rain. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
10 Home Ave.
Did I see one other person? Yes, no? Okay.
My name is Pete Kelleher. I live at 10 Morpheus Drive. Where the hill, where a lot of the water affecting Harriet comes down our driveways, comes down our stuff. My property will be touched by the tail end of this development, putting it above where their land is going to be. I'm only the second family to ever live in this house. This house was built in 1964. When we bought it, the entire basement was on pallets. These are families that are dealing with decades of water. This isn't a study during a period where Rhode Island was dealing with droughts. This isn't like, let's drop in after rain and see if there's a little bit of water. These are all stories going back decades. I've heard stories from the previous owner about the Broadview triathlon, where they would run through the swamp as part of the run, and they swim in one of the kids' pools, and they would run up and down the streets. But my point is, my property is above most of the houses. I see their houses from my backyard. I still get water above them, significantly above them. Their roof for their houses is below my backyard, and I'm still getting water above them. So I appreciate that everyone's doing their studies. I'm not an engineer. I'm a high school athletic coach. But at the end of the day, water's going to find the lowest spot. No matter what report you're going to throw out there, it's going to find the lowest spot. Whatever you put in its way, it's just going to keep going, kids, the lowest spot. That neighborhood is the lowest spot. So I just ask you to consider, this isn't just a report, this is life, these are families, these are decades worth of stories that they're telling you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all for coming. We certainly appreciate
Mr.
your
Chair,
input.
we have
Oh, yes, I was going to ask you, is there anybody in the queue?
We have some people virtually, so if there's anyone on Zoom who wants to speak, you can click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen.
We enjoy it better when you come here in person, rather than virtually.
So no one's raised their hand,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
We like to see the faces, but there's an opportunity for people who can't make it, that they can do this virtually and they can ask the questions. Okay, I think we've got a lot of information from you, and I certainly appreciate everybody coming and giving us your input. Gives us a lot to think about, but now moving forward, whatever happens, at least we've got a lot of questions we can answer, or ask and have answered. Yes, ma'am?
Do you mind just quickly going through what the process looks like forward? Most of us have never done this.
Sure, okay.
Just like what typically happens, obviously, we're not holding you to anything, but we don't know.
Well, for one thing, this wouldn't be the last time that you could come before us, okay? The next stage would be
Preliminary?
Well, there's going to be.
Well, it's a comprehensive permit. so it's
Yeah,
different.
well, the next meeting would be before the Conservation Commission, and they meet the second Thursdays of the month at 6:30, so they may be on the February meeting or the March meeting, I'm not sure, but we have the email list from your neighborhood that will let you know when it's going to happen. And then the next stage from here is they've got to go, is preliminary plan, which is where all the engineering is done, where all the studies are done. So there'd be another TRC meeting to review all that and discuss that, and then it would come to the planning board, and that's where there would be a vote. Depends on the applicant and, his team and how quickly or not quickly they prepare the plans and perform these studies.
But at the preliminary stage, we also have a public hearing, because when we get to that point, we'll have a better look at what all the engineering is, okay? And hopefully, all your questions are going to be answered, but you come back, okay? And you can ask more questions of the board and of the developer and his engineer and his experts.
So, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. So, you're going to receive the final plans?
Not a final, it's not a final.
Preliminary plan.
Preliminary.
You guys, this board?
Will be presented to us.
But I thought you'd be voting at the next time we were here.
Well, they would come before us with a preliminary plan, and there eventually would be a vote. And then the final plan would be approved by the planning department. So there would be one other stage, which isn't a public process.
But what Mr. Modica was talking about, between then and now, there'll be another TRC meeting, okay?
Correct.
And what else goes on? Hopefully the permits,
Mr. Chairman?
feedback from DEM, maybe?
You're right, we would need the DEM, any permits, we would need that before we would accept the preliminary plan application.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
If I
McDonald?
may, just in case there's anybody that doesn't, it's left with the technical language, TRC is Technical Review Committee. That's all of the people, the experts, engineering, water from the town, and they evaluate. That's what that means.
Fire safety and so on. They are advisors to us. They will highlight anything that they think that the board needs to know and learn about what's going on. And that includes the school department, police and fire, rescue actually too.
So it's this group right here that will end up ultimately having cats and deciding voters in it, right?
Yes. You're welcome.
And then not to make it more complicated, but if we were to deny the preliminary plan, then the applicant has the opportunity to go directly to Superior Court and appeal, which was also a change in the state law. There used to be another step. So the state law really streamlined this process, which, there's a lot of criticism of the state law. I will just say that I think because of the state law, we have been able to approve several affordable housing projects that work really well in the town, adaptive reuses and those kinds of things. Well, I think with like any other law, there's unintended consequences, and one of them is when the town says this is an R1 district, and then an R3, can be put there. That's, one of those unintended consequences. And while I have the soapbox, I'll just repeat my continued frustration that while it's called affordable housing, in the case, because these condos would be sold, it would be at 120% of the median income of the town, which means that most new police officers, people who've been on the force less than 5 years, firefighters, teachers, the very people who we're supposed to be creating this workhouse housing for would never be able to get a loan to buy these. And so the affordable is in quotes, in my opinion, and that's a very big frustration for me. And I've shared that with my state rep, my state senator. I encourage you to do the same. Again, I think by and large, what the legislature did was a good thing, because we do need more housing, and we need, the process did need some streamlining, but as in any process, there's unintended consequences that hopefully will get resolved in future legislative sessions.
I'm sorry, I just feel like everything that's being said to us unintentionally is being said very one-sided, so I would just like to say to the neighborhood, we have sought legal counsel. I'm kind of in charge of that. We had 16 days to do this, so we're not completely all together. We are also, if it is approved, allowed to take it to Superior Court, so it's not just Evanston. I'm sorry, so I just want to clarify, because we're just being told everything that's unlawful. So we are also allowed to do the opposite, so that's, and experts as well, all of that is being taken care of. This is just, has moved very fast since we found out about it, and we're all running from behind, so.
There is an awful lot to absorb, I understand it. And especially when this is, fresh and new to you. But your husband made a very good point. We do have an affordable housing project in town, okay? That's 100%. And it's, how many units? 44 units, 100%. And I agree with you. That's what we should be looking at, okay? To move us forward with affordable housing. But they're working on their financing right now to try to get the ball rolling there. But that's where we are.
I'm a 10th year teacher and I would qualify for this.
Excuse me?
I'm a 10th year teacher and I would qualify for these affordable housing units, so we're way past first and second year now, that I'm talking 20%.
Yeah, my son's a teacher. So
I'd like to share a personal opinion also of this. I've sat in, we have had many, many projects come before us. My personal opinion to the neighborhood is I have seen this particular project, the applicant has a lot of homework to do. There are tons of questions that you all presented, the TRC and to us this evening. And they're going to have to convince me of a lot of things that you brought up that are going to be taken care of. Again, that's my personal opinion. That's not the board, it's just me. So,
I also have a comment, and I think my comment is just this. I think we are hung up on the affordable housing, and I'm all for affordable housing. But in this project, we're talking about 3 units. It's not the entire. So is it going to change the character of your neighborhood? Of course it is. Are we putting it there because of affordable housing? 3 units to me, it's peanuts in a sense. So I would really think twice about it. Affordable housing, yes. We have many other areas where affordable housing could have gone that we let go. But we need to start thinking and focusing on the neighborhoods that we are changing, and including this entire board. That's my opinion.
So with that, we don't have anything else on the agenda, right? That's it. Yep. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Excuse me, I have one comment.
Yep, sure.
I'm not in favor of this project because it just doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. And I agree that we want affordable housing, but to put it everywhere, and also I'm tired of every little spare piece of land, usually wooded with wildlife and everything, in this established neighborhood for 50, 60, 70 years, gets gobbled up and they're gonna start to put condos on it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
I have a motion to adjourn by Ms. Vlasic and a second by the whole board at this time. Thank you, everyone.
thank you for everybody. Thank you, everybody.
And-
Thank you.
And